I would like to investigate the problem of the increasing daily violence and chaos in our world. No one today could ever say that we have built a society founded on care and harmony. And for all our colossal self-interest, we seem to be also blindly and uncaringly self-destructive. Something is wrong with us, and unless we can isolate the problem, study it, find out the causes of the problems, and end them, we are toast. There can be no greater example than this current pandemic to clearly display what is going so terribly wrong with mankind. We have lost our humanity. We have come to value a conceptual ideology within our brains of a capitalist-type educated structure, demanding that I reach the top and stay there. Our brain's inner functioning today, regardless of our age, is greatly the end result of 12 years of intensive and enforced schooling. As adults, each of us meets great frustrations in life to meet the manipulations and unfair societal structures favouring a certain upper echelon of society. What we are greatly unaware of is that our children are being processed to accept the immoral structure of a continuing society during their school years. But the damage goes deeper than a blind allegiance to all authority and an urgent willingness to accept any authority. Before beginning to even take one step into questioning to find anything out for oneself, practice has made our minds mechanical. Let me repeat that, because it is important to understand. Practice has made our minds mechanical. And what have we all practiced for over a decade at a time in our lives when our brains were so eager to learn and our minds functioning like sponges? We were practiced into the discipline of living with and continuously requiring to solve problems. Our education is nothing other than a repetition of newly presented problems for our young minds to solve. The damage is added to by the fact that each student sees each teacher as an indispensable requirement to solve the problems. Enter our world of lost souls and politicians and businessmen ready to heal their world. A brain educated to problems will find its ongoing life security in living with and trying to solve problems. This itself is one of our biggest problems. As we now have all been processed by a monstrously constructed, deeply manipulative schooling system, our brains are all functioning automatically as educated to. And what are the characteristics of this automatic game of mental play? Constant repetition, ambition, competition, greed, fear, desires, deep self-interest, corruption, conflict, and ultimately war. I am saying that our system of educating our children is contributing to our global propensity for war. Do not accept this. Do not deny this. Investigate to find out the truth. When you have eyes which see the truth of a problem, you are well down the road of solving that problem. When your eyes are clouded by what you know, life is a different matter. We have been educated in a terribly limiting manner, which if one takes the time to investigate, would be absolutely expected to give birth to our broken world. Our education can lead us to nowhere other than a collective chaos. And we do live in this collective chaos. To prevent the continuing corruption of our youth into a brainwashed ideology that life is about nothing other than ambitious pursuit, in a pecking order of brutal authority, in constant competition against all others, to battle against them, to get as much as I can for myself, constantly inventing, carrying, and attempting to solve inner problems and conflicts within and between myself and others. We have been educated to turn our lives and our world into the battlefield it certainly is today. Our education has been a total and complete success. But what is at the root of all the chaotic, driving action in our world today? Is it not this, that collectively we are continuously and incessantly engaged in a concentrated inner movement of focused thought? Each of us is engaged in this limiting and divisive behaviour, as educated to find our security within. A battle between each other to reach the highest number. Our brains are functioning automatically, conditioned, educated, within movements which they find a deep, lasting security because of a long-standing, mechanical, repetitive movement of exactly the same, lasting for over 12 tentative and early impressive years. Obviously, if we see this dreadful situation, it becomes incumbent to protect our children from the same societal subtle brain damage we were forced to receive and endure. But beyond that, beyond the dream that man may awaken to his collective and educated deep insanity, what do those of us do who have already been processed through this educational system of zombification? This is a bad position for any brain to live in. Have you not noticed the conflict everywhere in life? Outer and inner conflict. Have you never questioned its source? Greatly, the source will be found in our education. We are divided almost at birth and forced to compete against each other for at least 12 years of our forming young minds and lives. Practice leads our brains to finding deep security in repetitive mechanical actions. They turned us all into authority-following, self-interested, divisive, problem-solving, mountain-climbing little capitalist soldiers. And the enemies are our own people, humanity. Ultimately, this movement of education brings us to conflict and war. Conflict is everywhere because our brains are now pre-wired for it. Perhaps we need go back and question what the original designers of our systems of education actually had in mind for us. How do we escape this dastardly life betrayal? Collectively, we are daily engaged in a concentrated inner movement of thought. We live between an internal past and an internal future. This is also a result of education, a legacy of studying repeatedly, over and over again, aiming from the past of repetitive memorization into a future of hopeful reward. The brain is learning the mind rot of a capitalist structure. Put up with misery today and meaningless existence, glued to memorization for a meagre reward it may bring you at the end of it. We have been conditioned to betray this present moment, which is a moment so full of beauty and love and care. This is where we find our lost human care, relationship, and empathy. This present moment is totally inaccessible to a mind which is seeking into a future. And this is perhaps also where we begin to understand why our richest have all lost these essential human qualities. The battle between us, this educated competition we are all engaged in, has become the only important thing in life to most of us. Nothing more certain. In a world driven over a cliff by a pandemic, when so many poor are suffering and so many rich are mopping up their apparent good fortune, our rich have lost what brings us to care for each other as human beings. In fact, we have all lost this quality of care and love, belonging and natural to every newborn child, because we have been conditioned, programmed, educated, and manipulated to a particular and highly limiting, repetitively destructive activity of ambition and problem solving. Can you imagine the chaos in a world where every person is ambitiously pursuing his own selfish interests in continuing battle against all others? We wonder why we are so aggressive and inhumane against each other. We wonder, but we never look or question further than to wonder. We need do much more than that. This is a dangerous and urgent problem we all face and are involved in today. We are in the unenviable position that our planet has now been harmed by our selfish and limiting activities. We will all die unless we can come together, nothing more certain. And before we go entering any wars, thinking that Americans have the right to live more than the Chinese, or that Afghani people, somehow lives there mean less than a Brit, we are all human beings, all caught in divisive sides of our mutually destructive and divided inner educated walls and fences. Today, we are attempting to bring peace between us, but we begin from our mutually divided states. Peace is only to be found, surely, when we are no longer divided, meaning that which divides us must come to an end before we have any chance of finding peace. And that would be our nations, our religions, our ideologies, our political identities, and our societal class structures. In other words, all the accumulative factors of my civilized life I currently gain a sense of deep psychological security from. You see the danger? It is huge. We are divided by how we think, which is rooted in how we have been educated. Our divisive and limiting inner worlds are dictating our outer daily actions. An Israeli Jew, educated traditionally, is unlikely to hold love and care in their hearts for any young Palestinian Muslim. We are placing our inner educated conceptual approaches to life in a higher position than our brotherhood and commonality to each other, which is much more factual. Our ideologies are factual in the sense they are rooted in our brains, but there is not much evidence around other than that to display any accurate vision that these ideological components of our psychological inner structures have ever successfully managed to do anything than collectively bring us to repeatedly kill each other over and over again in historical and daily brutal wars. A large issue is that our thinking self is educated, concentrated thought. We are being blinded to seeing this movement as though it is the very root of our being, accomplished by a scholastic insistence that school rewards good outcomes and punish, or at least frown upon, bad outcomes. Why do we punish our children so? In a classroom of 20 or 30 students forced into competition against each other, we are forcing and pushing certain children to look upon themselves as less worthy than others. The ones who manage to compete well are likewise destroyed. The high achievers, now glued to a pointless life of forever chasing their own tail, forever seeking more than they could ever need, while denying those who really do need. And today, all of us, every single one of us practically, is acting from a foundation of this limiting inner educated chattering of problem-crunching knowledge. It is quite a gift, and quite a problem our educational systems give to each of us to solidify our ability to apparently meet life well. As we are now all acting self-interestedly, as educated to, following authority, competitively, we have lost care for each other and sight of the relationships between each other. We have lost sight of the fact that we are one. We divide in our minds, in our thinking, rooted and founded on educated knowledge. We will only ever unite by ending that which continues to divide us. That will be found inside your brain cells. Listen to your inner chatter. It feels like you, and it is, in so much as this is a conditioned movement within your memory. But this is the true enemy of all of us, because it divides us. It divides us within and between ourselves. This is the root point of all of our human problems. And how do we come to understand this? Well, we do not go to any teacher. We do not read any books. We do not listen and accept the words of anyone, certainly including these words. These words are a simple pointer, a roadmap, which will only have any value if you can follow where they point to and tread the actual terrain. Investigating and understanding the root of the actual problem which lies within each one of us is the only possibility we have to heal this dreadful communal problem. And this problem is what you are.